Okay, tonight's lesson is going to be tomato bisque. This is the house soup from Ciel Bleu. Now, I had made this soup prior to my tenure at Ciel Bleu, and I heard the chef and the sous chef speaking about what they wanted to do for a house soup before the restaurant opened to the general public at the Mayfair region. Until that point in time, they'd only been doing room service as we started to build our staff for the grand opening. So I knew enough French to know what they were talking about, and I said, hey, I can do this. And they said, no problem. So the chef, not knowing the talent capabilities of the average American cook, who at that point in time, speaking of me, I'd been a sous chef before I took over the sauté position at Ciel Bleu. So I put together this particular recipe, and when I came back and presented it to the chef, he was completely satisfied with it and maintained it as it was from the first time that I put it together for him. This is a pureed soup. There are no thickening agents. It is gluten-free. You do not even need cream for it because of the combination of vegetables smooths out the acidity of the tomatoes, and it gives it a very, very nice, palatable flavor. It makes an excellent mother sauce. You can take this particular recipe and you can change it into a lot of other things. You can use it for anything as simple as a sloppy joe to as refined as a tomato basil pesto sauce. And sometimes it feeds a hungry hound. So now we're going to present this particular recipe to you as a tomato bisque from Ciel Bleu from the glory days. And alongside we have some fresh baked challah. Now the recipe for the challah is not included in this video because the challah is a separate video all unto itself. So you want to check that out too and see what we did with the challah and the different ways that we used it and how well it goes with this. And also too, you'll even see this particular sauce slash soup make a debut in the pesto section, the basil section, the fresh garden pesto section. So enjoy. Like I say, this is a very, very, very flexible recipe, and it is a mother sauce, one of the 7 mother sauces for cooking. So it literally covers a lot of bases. And when you learn how to make a pureed soup like this, you can apply the same method to making other soups. Say, for example, potato and leek, broccoli and cheddar, whatever your heart's desire is. Sweet potato soup, doesn't matter, totally up to you. But the method is intact and the same. The recipe follows at the end of the video, just as all of our videos. Until then, enjoy, and like I say, don't worry about how much of what's being used during the video. It'll all be explained at the end of the video. Just watch the methods and follow what's going on, and spend your time learning the method. Thank you very much for tuning in, and remember, any and every time you have a chance to support your libraries, do so. They're essential to your communities for providing services that all families need, not only for taking care of children in terms of additional education for their schooling, but also in supplying services, community services that are essential for your area, for your entire suburb. So do so. It's in your best interests. Thank you very much, and let's get started. Okay, here's your proof in the pudding. Aluminum cookware is not what you want to use, ever. This is a brand new nylon scrubbing sponge, so you can see there's nothing on it at all. This particular pot has never been used to cook food with. And it's aluminum, and it's literally brand new, other than the fact that it's just been used for these demonstrations. That's it. No food has ever touched it. Again, the nylon scrubbing pad, and we're going to use bottled water and a clean, untouched plastic cup. I'll put the cup to the side. We'll open the bottle in front of you. And we're going to pour it in here, just enough to cover the bottom. And again, once again, you can see there's nothing in here except for the nylon scrubber and the water. And all we're going to do is this, as though we're wiping the pan down and cleaning it. Now, nylon should not do anything to metal, or at least that's what we think. But because aluminum is so soft, and it melts literally so easily when it comes in contact with acids like sugar, lemon juice, lime juice, tomato, that it literally peels off in layers and goes into your food in megadoses. You can probably see that it's not coming down all so clean. But we'll take the sponge and move it to the side and get rid of it. And we'll come back and we'll put our cup down so you can see where it's at. That's what's in your food. This is all aluminum water, and that's what goes in your food when you use aluminum cookware. So if you want to continue using aluminum cookware, that's your choice. I choose not to let anything like that ever enter my food, my meal, or anything I serve anyone else. I've been using stainless steel cookware since the mid-'80s, and I'm not going to change. Stainless steel cookware is hypoallergenic. Aluminum cookware is dangerous. Don't use aluminum cookware. Okay, we're going to start with Ciel Bleu tomato bisque. Now the story behind this was when I was working at Ciel Bleu, I was hired from my sous chef's position at Toulouse, a French restaurant, to Ciel Bleu as their sauté cook. Ciel Bleu was loading up on talent at the time, and they were plucking sous chefs out of other French restaurants and bringing them on as line cooks. So the talent level at Ciel Bleu was really high at the time. Now, the chef was talking to the sous chef, and they were talking about what they wanted to do for a house soup. And I understood enough French to know that they were going to think about making a tomato bisque. And I interrupted the conversation, basically because I was standing next to him and listening. And I said, I'll do that. And so the chef, not knowing anything about the skill levels or the skill sets of American cooks, looked at me in a little bit of a hesitation and then said, okay, and nodded his head. So when I was done, he came back and he checked out what I had finished, and he gave it his stamp of approval on the first try. This is what we're doing now, the house soup for Ciel Bleu. What you want to do first is assemble your ingredients. Now, since this is a pureed soup, you do not have to worry about how the vegetables are cut for the puree. And what we're going to do is we're going to use celery, carrots, onions, mushrooms, garlic, fresh tomatoes, and canned tomatoes. And this combination will give us a very nice, well-balanced flavor when it's all finished and done. And we're about to start. Okay, we have our soup pot, and it is getting hot. And what we're going to do is we're going to put just enough oil in here so that it sautés. We do not want to fry. We want just enough oil in here so that the vegetables don't stick. That's the difference between sautéing and frying. Now we're going to add our carrots first. Nice and slow so that we don't get burned from any splashing. And we dig out our favorite wooden spoon. Carrots go in first. They're the hardest, and they'll take the longest to cook. Also, too, we want to make sure that we get a nice sweet flavor, so we're going to caramelize them by cooking them a little bit longer in the oil. After they've given a few minutes of a head start, we're going to go straight to the celery. That's our next hardest vegetable. We'll stir them in, and in a couple of minutes we'll add our onions. Okay, carrots and the celery have a good head start. Time for the onions. Pretty easy and to the point, huh? Doesn't get any easier than this. And again, stir them in gently and smoothly and evenly. This way you don't splash hot oil up on yourself. And we go right back to the cooking part. Let it do its job Can't speed it up, so don't be impatient, don't be in a hurry. Now as we saute the vegetables, you want to make sure that you're on a medium to a medium-high flame, depending on how many BTUs your oven has and what type of cookware you have. You'll have to do a little bit of fine-tuning on that. You certainly do not want this so high that the oil you're using begins to smoke from burning from too much heat, let alone singeing the edge of the vegetables before they get a chance to cook thoroughly and caramelize. So keep an eye on that. And also too, remember that you shouldn't have so many vegetables in your pot that they're not actually sauteing. See how they've got that little bubbling action going on in the oil? That is basically what you're seeing is sauteing. There's no oil, there's no water building up in the bottom of the pot. It's pure oil, and that's how it should be. Any moisture coming out of the vegetables should be steaming out. That's basically what's referred to commonly as sweating the vegetables. For that reason, the water evaporates, the flavor of the vegetable gets stronger as basically the excess liquid that's in it evaporates. Also too, when you have excess liquid in the pan and the pan gets hot, you're boiling your vegetables, you're no longer sauteing them. So you don't want to overload the pot. That's a common mistake made in cooking, especially in restaurants. It's surprising how many chefs and cooks do that. Trying to get too much done too quick, speeding up the process, trying to sacrificing quality for volume, and there's really no need to do that. So as the vegetables are almost ready for the mushrooms to be added, we're going to give the onions just a few more minutes, and then when they break down just a little bit more, we're going to add the mushrooms. And of all these vegetables right here, the mushrooms will spit out their water the fastest because they're the most porous. That's why they're going in last. Not only will they cook quicker, but we don't want that extra moisture that leaks out of them so quick, accumulating in the pot with all the rest of the vegetables before they've had a chance to caramelize and saute. Okay, we're ready for the mushrooms. And in they go. And we stir them in. That way they get a nice coating of oil on them, and they're less likely to scorch and stick on the side of the pot, let alone on the bottom. Now separately we have our chicken stock heating up, and when that comes to a boil we'll turn it off. When the vegetables are done sauteing, we're going to add the chicken stock directly to the pot. This speeds up the process and cuts down our wait time as far as finishing this off in a timely manner. If you're adding room temperature or cold stock to this, it's literally like starting all over again. There's no need to do that. Our tomato products are ready to go in, and the mushrooms will literally be ready in just a second or two. Right before your eyes, you're seeing them wilt. We got a good flame going on this. We're working with good pans. And we're going to add our garlic, already chopped up and ready to rock and roll. Now, since the garlic's already chopped up fine, it's not going to take long to saute. The reason we want to saute it in the oil is we want it to be a little bit sweeter and not as bitter as if we just dropped it in raw and into the broth. So this is the main reason why we put it in last, because it's going to heat up and cook very, very quickly. And when it does, we want to be ready to add the broth. And I think we're just about ready for the broth. You can see that it's almost ready to come to a boil immediately as soon as we've added it, which is what we want. We want this to cook as quickly, as efficiently as possible. And whenever we're adding any type of sauce, in this case tomatoes, anything at all, when you're adding it to a broth, you always want to get closer down to the broth and then let in whatever it is that you're using. For example, this can of tomatoes that we're going to use, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're as close to the broth as possible when we pour it in. What happens then is we don't splash ourselves. If you drop it from a high place like up here, you're more likely to splash yourself and you're more likely to burn yourself. Even if you don't burn yourself and splash yourself with hot liquids, you get to clean up a mess. And who needs that? And last on our list of things to add is our tomato paste. And just like that, we're done. Now all we have to do is let this boil and reduce a little bit. And while it's boiling and reducing, all the vegetables that are in here are going to get softer, which is exactly what we want. The faster they cook and the softer they get, the easier they'll be to puree. The easier they are to puree, the easier they're going to be to strain. And also, too, less of what we cook will be caught in the strainer and unusable. So we want this to be nicely done. That's why we cut up all the vegetables small, so we get the maximum use out of all their flavor, all of their texture, all of their nutrition content. Now, even if we don't use, say for example, a chicken stock here, so you're a vegetarian, you can certainly use a vegetable broth, or you can use just straight up water. Your choice. Either one, this will be a very solid foundation for whatever it is that you're putting it and making this into. Remember, once we get done with this tomato-based soup, before we even get to the point of seasoning it or doing anything with it, it's a great base sauce, so you can use it for other things. For example, you can cut cream and pesto into it and make it into an instant tomato pesto sauce for a pasta dish. Or you can use this sauce straight up as is and make it into, say for example, sloppy joes. Or you can use this sauce and you can use it as a base to do other things, like possibly make a barbecue sauce out of it. Totally up to you. Now, as you can see, our tomato base for our soup is at a nice rolling boil, not too fast, not too slow. This does two things. One, gives us an even cook. Number two, it prevents scorching by not overheating it. And also two, just once in a while, you come by and you give it one of these. That's all you got to do, just to make sure nothing's settled in one position and not moved in a long enough period of time where it starts to stick someplace. And you can see it should come right back to a boil again within moments of you doing that. Okay, we're going to check and see how well done the vegetables are for pureeing. Now, I'm going to show you a method that I use specifically because I think it's pretty much foolproof, because there's a lot of ways of doing this in terms of like what you use to see if the vegetables are tender enough. I think there's one way to do it that makes sense beyond all the rest of them, and that is we're going to fish out a piece of carrot. Yeah, let's see if we can find a good one here. Here we go. All right. Now we're going to reposition our camera, and here you go. Just put a spoon on top of it and push down. See how it's smashed and it's real soft? It's done. If you use a spoon, it's even contact surface and even pressure across the whole thing. If you use a fork or a knife, even a tongs, there's a tendency to push down on one spot too hard, not the others. The spot that you're pushing down on gives way, but not everything. Everything should give way, and this gives you an idea of how easy it's going to puree once it gets in a food processor. So there you go. Our soup is ready to go to the food processor. Alright, we're now in the home stretch for finishing Ciel Bleu's tomato bisque. What we did before we took this off the fire, meaning the soup as it is now, not pureed, we let it cool off. And the reason we let it cool off is for a very different reason than what you may be thinking of. Right here is where the base of the soup will be sitting, and is sitting, and here's the motor casing right here. And if this goes here, hot, off the fire, at 212 degrees, guess what else is 212 degrees? The motor. And it's a great way to overheat your Cuisinart. and possibly even damage the motor because they use a lot of plastic parts internally. And what happens is when they get hot enough, they expand, and that causes extra stress on them, especially when it comes to the transmission inside the machine. So you don't want to do any purees inside your Cuisinart where the puree is red hot. Let it cool off so that it's manageable. Also, too, it is safer, especially if it splashes. You don't need little red spots all over your face from minor burns because it's splashed and got you. Notice, once again, we're a little bit less than halfway, so it should come up right about here, below the flood level, and give us a nice, good, smooth puree, in which we will strain every load that comes out of the machine. And then we'll get a very nice, high-quality pureed soup. And we will begin now. Now we're going to strain the sauce in the puree, and we're going to use a ladle. And the reason we're going to use a ladle is it applies even pressure throughout the inside of the mesh of the strainer, and also too, it doesn't cause as much damage to the strainer as using other items. So this particular method is probably the best one that you can choose of all of them. And it's very consistent. And you got to remember, in terms of like the pressure that it puts on it, which gets everything through the mesh itself. Now right here is where your strainer will break and crack first. It's right around here where it starts to let go. You reduce that by using a ladle. And if you can't use a ladle, then you want to use a rubber spatula. This is just as good, but you can chew up the tips of the rubber spatula by doing this because this is metal and it's not necessarily the smoothest surface. So using a ladle, nice flat bottom, gives you good results. And here we'll show you. When you're seeing the puree go in there, those little pieces of lumps and whatnot that you see in there, it's uneven. That's almost all tomato skins, tomato seeds, and little pieces of stalk and skin from the other vegetables that are accumulated. And you see how easily that goes through? You don't have to apply much pressure. And here's your waste. This is what's left over. So not everything is going to go through, and that's okay. Not everything has to go through. Now you can certainly choose to not do this. I myself choose to do it because the end results are far superior. Here we are with the final product. This is referred to in French cooking as a mother sauce. The tomato mother sauce, one of the base sauces from which other sauces are made. You can do a lot of different things with this. You can add shrimp to it. You can turn this into a lobster bisque by putting a reduced lobster stock into it and some lobster, of course. You can make this into a vegetable soup, which it is right now, is a vegetable base soup. So it's completely vegetarian. You can take this and you can put shaved cheeses on it, fresh herbed butters. You can put fresh herbs into it directly, rice, potatoes, grilled chicken. The list is endless. It's only limited by your taste buds and what you have in mind to eat. This freezes extremely well. Very, very shelf stable. This sauce in your cooler 2 weeks without much of a problem. Make sure that your refrigerator is the right temperature, 40 degrees and down, and it's in a sealed, clean container, airtight. And every time you use anything in your refrigerator, no matter what it is, as you start to take whatever it is in that container out and use it and consume it, transfer that food to a smaller container. Always keep in mind, bacteria needs moisture and air to procreate. When you deny bacteria access to something like air, you slow down its growth process, and therefore the shelf life of whatever food it is that you're protecting is longer. So all of your food will last longer, keeping it airtight, keeping the moisture away from it, keeping it at the room temperature, at the right temperature, and you're all set and ready to rock and roll. Enjoy. A lot of times when you have a sauce like this, the first instinct is to add cream to it. Me, myself, I like the idea of adding cream to it. But I'm going to show you something here. There's only about 2.5 ounces of cream, heavy cream, in this container right now. Watch the difference just that little bit makes in 2.5 quarts of this sauce, or this soup, I should say. a huge difference in the final product with so little. Now, I don't recommend using milk. I do not recommend using half and half. Both of them can separate because of the acidity of the tomatoes and from being heated. Always better off using cream with something like this. And you just use less. That's all there is to it if you're worried about fat content. But now, just like that, 2.5 ounces of cream to 2.5 quarts of the soup base, and you've got a cream of tomato soup. And they's eating there, let me tell you. Okay, now you're probably saying to yourself, gee, I saw the Ciel Bleu tomato bisque episode, and I was wondering, what am I going to do if I don't want to eat all this tomato soup? Well, it's the perfect base to make a cream of tomato pesto sauce. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We've got some of our Ciel Bleu bisque sitting right here, and all we're going to do is just add a touch of cream. That's it. Half and half will work just fine. It won't separate in the sauce because the acidity level is not that high. Now you're saying, okay, fine, well, where'd the pesto come from? Well, the pesto just came from our basil segment. And we're going to drop a couple of spoonfuls of pesto in here that we just made. And now I guarantee you, if you follow these recipes and you use this pesto with this tomato sauce, this base, your sauce will match up with any Italian restaurant in the Chicago area. It's as good as it gets. Simple and to the point, great with pasta, great with seafood, excellent with chicken, vegetables, ragouts, you name it. This is a great way to serve Italian food, let alone French food. You want to do Italian, you can certainly do raviolis with this. You can certainly do any type of a stuffed pasta. It doesn't matter. It's totally up to you and how you want to do it. And if you want to take something and put it into a skillet and bake it and pour this over the top and pop it in the oven, the sauce will handle it. You won't have any problems. Excellent little crossover between the two classes. A great sauce and an excellent prep for both of them. So like I say, if you want to really wow your friends, do this little combination right here, and they'll be just wondering, what the heck, how did you figure that out? Trust me, I'm a chef.